Good afternoon, everyone. My name is McPherson, and I am the Foreign Affairs Critic for the New Democratic Party of Canada. I want to start today by expressing my sympathy and my solidarity with the people of Lebanon. We know that today has been the most deadly day for the people of Lebanon since 2006. We know that just today 1,000 people have lost their lives, including 20 children. We are hearing from Lebanese Canadians and other Canadians across the country that the people are deeply concerned and deeply worried about the safety of their loved ones. And my thoughts go out to all those who have lost somebody today. So today I wrote to Melanie Joly requesting that she urgently take 3 steps to help with the ongoing crisis in Palestine and Israel. These 3 actions that I'm asking the Minister of Foreign Affairs to take do not require an act of Parliament. They do not require a vote. These are things that she can do, that it rests on her and the Prime Minister. And they will require moral courage and political will, something that we have yet to see from this current administration. The urgency of this situation cannot be understated. In the past 11 months, tens of thousands of Palestinians have been slaughtered in an ongoing genocide. Israeli hostages still remain in Gaza, and their families are calling for a hostage deal. The humanitarian crisis is horrifying. Hamas will not lay down its arms, and the Netanyahu government is continuing a horrific genocide against the Palestinian people. Over the past week, we have seen an escalation between Israel and Hezbollah, increasing the chances of a wider conflict in the region. Civilians, particularly children, have been killed in Israeli airstrikes and by the use of indiscriminate explosives in pagers, actions that have been condemned by the United Nations. Many Lebanese Canadians are telling us that they are terrified and that they are shocked by Canada's silence. We know that civilians in Israel are also enduring rocket attacks, and we condemn these attacks by Hezbollah. What we urgently need is de-escalation, and for Canada to do everything they can to help with that de-escalation. One of the things that we are asking from this government for is the recognition of the State of Palestine. In February, I brought forward Motion 113 that would recognize the State of Palestine. For decades, Palestinians have been subject to occupation, resulting in the removal of their rights, and 145 UN member states have already recognized the State of Israel, or the State of Palestine, I'm sorry. Under international law, the State of Palestine already exists, and the Canadian government could recognize the State of Palestine today, right now. And I want to be very clear. We are at a very dangerous moment in time for this. This is not a time when we need a study. This is not a time where we need to have further discussions. If we go to an election within weeks or months, and if there is a Conservative government, this will not happen. There is an urgency here that is vital, that requires that the Liberal government take the steps necessary to recognize the State of Palestine. We are also asking that sanctions be put on those officials from the Netanyahu government that are responsible for the violence against Palestinian people. We are happy to see the sanctions against Hamas. They are an illegal terrorist organization. We've done a lot of work to make sure that Iranian officials are also sanctioned. In fact, it was my motion within the House last spring that put the Tumaj sanctions in place that would highlight those Iranians that needed to be held accountable. However, we have not seen the same action from this government on Netanyahu's administration. We would like to see those that are responsible be sanctioned, and that includes Netanyahu himself, that includes Smotrich, and it includes Ben Gvir, all those responsible for the genocidal language against the Palestinian people. And finally, we are calling on an arms embargo, a 2-way arms embargo. You know, what we have seen from this government is a twisting of words and a failure to give the very clear details on what arms are going to Israel and how those are being stopped. Right now, we know there is a loophole that the NDP have been trying to close for almost a decade that allows weapons to go through the United States and on to Israel. That should have been closed by now, and it certainly should be closed now, now that we know that the Israeli government is committing a genocide against people. Those are my comments. I'm happy to take some questions from you.
The former CIA director called Israel's pager attack a form of terrorism. Do you believe it was a form of terrorism?
What I think is that every single country is obliged to adhere to international law, and that what we are seeing right now is not adhering to international law, and that in fact Israel should be, the Netanyahu government should be held accountable for when they break international law. You know, we have called out the terrorist attack by Hamas. We have called out that we know that Hezbollah is a listed terrorist entity, but the Israeli government is breaking international law when they are using indiscriminate weapons, and the people of Lebanon are suffering. Children are suffering. We know 20 children lost their lives today. And of course, children can never be combatants, can never be targets.
But it's terrorism to rig the supply chain and do an attack like the pager attack.
It is breaking international law.
Recognizing a Palestinian state, you say it's not time for further study, it should just be done. So why did the NDP back the Liberal MP's motion to study potential recognition of Palestinian state at the Foreign Affairs
Well, Rafi, as you know, I can't comment on what happened in camera. It's disappointing that some members of the committee felt that they could comment on what happens in camera at Foreign Affairs Committee. Hopefully that there will be a vote that it is public coming soon. But I can't comment on anything that's happened in camera, and no members of that committee should have.
Important motion be studied in camera. Like, why wouldn't that be open to the
You would have to ask those that brought that motion forward why they chose to do that in camera.
The demands that you make today, you've been making for a while, but before you were in a supply and confidence agreement with the government, you had some form of leverage. Now you don't have that anymore. Short of telling the government they need to do this or else you would vote no confidence, what leverage do you have now to put these demands in place?
You know, a lot of times what I see is that I have the ability to amplify the calls that so many Canadians from coast to coast to coast are making. So we have heard from hundreds of thousands of Canadians that are so deeply disappointed in what the government's response to the war in Gaza and to the ongoing genocide. We've seen this time and time again, and so I'm using my voice to amplify that. It was never something that was part of the supply and confidence agreement, so nothing has changed in that case. In fact, what I would say right now is that we have the ability to hold the government accountable for a wide range of things, but we have been pushing this government every step of the way since October 7th to do more, to protect people, to ensure peace, to ensure that Canada is adhering to international law.
Would you be ready to make the government fall on these issues if they don't respect your requests?
Listen, we are going to continue to use whatever power we have to push the government so that they will recognize the State of Palestine, so that they will actually do an effective two-way arms embargo where they are closing those loopholes that are allowing weapons to continue to go to Israel from Canada, and we will also push for sanctions.
But would you be ready to make them fall on this issue?
So here's my challenge that I have with this. We have an opportunity here to push the government. If there is an election, and if a Conservative government is elected next, we have heard from Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives that they have no interest in international law. They have no interest in protecting the rights of Palestinians. They have no interest in recognizing the State of Palestine that already exists.
I just have one more question.
Have the Liberals given you any explanation of why they won't support, recognizing the State of Palestine?
So my perspective is that they are dragging their feet and trying, as Liberals often do, to sit on both sides of the fence. The State of Palestine has been recognized by 145 United Nations countries, including allies like Norway, Spain, and Ireland. There is absolutely no reason why the government can't do this right now. There is no need for a study. There is no need for further discussion. This could be done right now and should be done right now. The Liberals have not given me any indication of why they are dragging their feet, but to be perfectly honest, they drag their feet on everything, so I'm not surprised.
Just one more question. Canada is not a huge player in the Middle East. Even if the Liberals were to say yes to all your requests, what would it change? We're seeing this massive escalation. Do you really think it would make a difference on the ground?
Well, I have to say, Canada is a G7 country. And so as such, we should be adhering to international law. Canada was one of the architects of the Rome Statute. We were one of the countries that built the international justice system. And then to turn around and say that we're not sure we're going to adhere to it is appalling. So there is a point in Canada doing this, to say nothing of the fact that for every Canadian citizen that is watching this government apply human rights and international law differently in different contexts, that it's horrifying for Canadians. This is not the sort of leadership that our citizens expect from our government. And so it does matter. It matters in Canada, but it also matters internationally. Canada does have a role to play in this.
G7, I mean, no other country in the G7 is taking these steps. And often what we hear from Canada is they can't be acting alone. So do you think there's value in them trying to negotiate with allies specifically in the G7? I recognize others in the West have taken some of these steps. Like, should they be trying to act by consensus?
Well, I'm working with my colleagues, for example, within New Zealand and Australia and Ireland to see if there are ways that collectively we can push our governments to do that work. I do think any of those negotiations make a lot of sense, but Canada can do it on its own. And I think when we look at countries like Norway, like Spain, like Ireland, that are very much like-minded allies of Canada, it's very possible for us to be doing that. And it's an important indication that Canada believes in international law. It's an important indication that we are prepared to take a leadership stance. We have a long history in this country of being leaders in peace building, being leaders in, fighting for what is right. I think of South Africa. I think of other examples of that. The fact that we have such a very different response in this situation than what we have seen in even Ukraine and other situations is shocking for many Canadians and for many around the world. It's a damage to our diplomacy. It's a damage to our reputation.
On the escalation in Lebanon, how do you feel about our country's preparedness to evacuate people, to help people get out of Lebanon as things escalate?
We've not seen the government act with near sufficient urgency and scope to deal with a potential crisis of having to help people escape Lebanon. Right now, we've heard from people that have been trapped in their cars for 8 hours while bombs fall around them. We've heard harrowing stories of children that are being traumatized, of people with seniors that cannot get out of Lebanon right now. Canada is not doing near enough.
Do they need to be evacuating Lebanese Canadians? Just for clarity, is that what you're asking for?
Yes. They should be doing everything they can to help Lebanese Canadians get to safety. We've seen this before. We've seen the Canadian government step up when there was Canadian citizens that they needed to be evacuated in other circumstances. Why would this be any different?
Thank you very much.
Thanks.